My name is Senna, and until 3 months ago, I thought I was living the perfect life. I had what every woman dreams of: a loving husband who brought me coffee every morning, a beautiful daughter who still wanted bedtime stories, and a marriage that seemed unbreakable after 12 years together. We were the couple other people envied at neighborhood barbecues. We held hands at parent-teacher conferences. We finished each other's sentences. But here's what I've learned about perfect marriages. Sometimes they're perfect because one person is perfectly good at lying. I used to scroll past those cheating stories on social media. You know the ones. I'd shake my head thinking, how could she not know? Or, that would never happen to me. I was so confident in my relationship that I actually felt sorry for women who suspected their husbands. I thought they were paranoid, insecure, maybe even a little dramatic. Kieran was my college sweetheart. We met in our sophomore year marketing class, got married right after graduation, and built what I thought was an honest life together. He sold commercial real estate, I worked in digital marketing, and we had our daughter, Brielle, 7 years ago. She's got his dark hair and my stubborn streak, and she's the light of both our lives. Or at least, I thought she was the light of both our lives. See, children notice everything. They're like little detectives, picking up on things adults miss because we're too busy, too trusting, or maybe too scared to see the truth. Brielle had been asking weird questions lately. Why Daddy whispered on the phone, why he showered as soon as he got home from work, why he smiled at his phone during dinner. I brushed off her curiosity as typical 7-year-old nosiness. I should have listened to her sooner. The day everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I woke up excited because it was Valentine's Day party day at Riverside Elementary. I'd spent the entire weekend making heart-shaped sugar cookies with pink frosting, and Brielle had picked out her favorite dress, the pink one with tiny hearts that made her feel like a princess. We were running late as usual, and Kieran was being extra helpful, which I thought was sweet. He even offered to leave work early to help with the party setup. Looking back, I wonder if he was overcompensating, if some guilty part of him knew what was coming, because what happened next changed everything. In front of 30 parents, teachers, and children at my daughter's school Valentine's party, my 7-year-old daughter asked one innocent question that shattered my world and exposed my husband's affair. The worst part, everyone heard it. Everyone saw his reaction, and everyone watched as I discovered the truth in the most humiliating way possible. This is the story of how my perfect marriage ended in a classroom decorated with paper hearts, and how sometimes the people who love you most are the ones brave enough to tell you the truth you're too afraid to see. Let me paint you a picture of what I thought was my perfect life before it all came crashing down. Every morning at 6:30, Kieran would wake up first and bring me coffee in bed. Not because I asked him to, but because he said he loved seeing me smile before the day got crazy. We'd stolen this ritual from our honeymoon 12 years ago, and somehow he'd never stopped doing it. Even on his busiest days, even when he was rushing to close a big real estate deal, there was always that warm mug waiting on my nightstand. Our house in Maplewood was everything we'd dreamed of when we were broke college students sharing ramen noodles in his tiny dorm room. 3 bedrooms, a white picket fence that Kieran painted every spring, and a kitchen where we actually cooked dinner together most nights. Brielle would do her homework at the island while I prepped vegetables, and Kieran told us about his day. He was always animated, gesturing with his hands as he described difficult clients or celebrating when he closed another deal. Tuesday nights were sacred in our house. After dinner, we'd all pile onto the couch for what Brielle called family movie time. She'd pick something completely age-inappropriate like a romantic comedy, and Kieran would spend half the movie explaining why the characters were making terrible decisions. I'd laugh at his commentary while braiding Brielle's hair, and she'd fall asleep between us before the credits rolled. Then Kieran would carry her to bed while I cleaned up the popcorn kernels from the couch cushions. He never missed her school events. Never. While other dads sent apologetic texts about work emergencies, Kieran would rearrange his entire schedule to be there. He was the dad who volunteered to judge the science fair, who showed up to every soccer game even when she spent most of the time picking dandelions instead of chasing the ball. The other moms used to joke that they wished their husbands were half as involved as mine. That's why I was so excited about the Valentine's party. Kieran had volunteered to help set up decorations, and I could already picture us working together to transform Ms. Valdez's classroom into a winter wonderland of pink and red hearts. I'd spent Saturday afternoon making sugar cookies with Brielle, letting her lick the spoon and getting flour in her dark curls. She was so proud of those cookies, carefully arranging them in the container and asking me every hour if it was time to go to school yet. Sunday night, she'd tried on her Valentine's dress 3 times, spinning in front of the mirror and asking if she looked pretty enough. The dress was pink with tiny white hearts scattered across the fabric, and it made her look like the princess she believed herself to be. Kieran had bought it for her just because she'd seen it in a store window and said it was the most beautiful dress in the whole world. That was typical Kieran. He couldn't say no to making his girls happy. I remember feeling genuinely grateful as I watched other families in our neighborhood deal with custody schedules and awkward drop-offs. My friend Rachel was constantly stressed about coordinating with her ex-husband, making sure their son had his soccer cleats at the right house on the right weekend. Another neighbor, Jennifer, had confided in me about finding suspicious charges on her husband's credit card. I'd listened sympathetically while internally feeling thankful that I never had to worry about things like that. Our biggest concern was Brielle's struggle with multiplication tables. She'd inherited my creative mind but not my patience with numbers, and homework time often ended with frustrated tears. Kieran was better at staying calm during math meltdowns, breaking down the problems into smaller pieces while I made hot chocolate and tried not to feel like a failure as a mother. The morning of the Valentine's party, I woke up with that excited energy you get before something you've been looking forward to. Kieran was already in the shower, humming some song I didn't recognize, and I could hear Brielle in her room talking to her stuffed animals about the party. I'd laid out my favorite red sweater the night before, wanting to look put together for the other parents. Kieran seemed extra attentive that morning, asking if I needed help carrying anything to school, offering to pick up coffee for Ms. Valdez, even suggesting we go out to dinner afterward to celebrate. At the time, I thought he was just being sweet. I thought he was as excited as I was to spend the afternoon with our daughter and her classmates. I had no idea he was overcompensating for guilt. I had no idea that while I was planning our family dinner, he was planning to sneak away early to meet someone else. I had no idea that the man who brought me coffee every morning was also whispering sweet nothings to another woman every night. Sometimes I wonder if perfect lives are just well-constructed lies waiting for a 7-year-old to accidentally tear them down. The first sign something was wrong came 20 minutes into the Valentine's party. Kieran's phone started buzzing during the craft station activity, and I watched his entire demeanor shift in real time. One moment, he was helping little Tommy glue construction paper hearts onto his card, laughing at the boy's crooked cutting, and the next moment, he was rigid, distracted, checking his phone like it contained urgent news. The buzzing wasn't the polite single notification you get from work emails. This was persistent, demanding attention. Buzz, buzz, pause, buzz again. I was across the room helping Brielle and her friend Madison with their friendship bracelets when I noticed Kieran fumbling with his phone, trying to silence it while still appearing engaged with the children. "Everything okay?" I called over, expecting him to wave me off with his usual easy smile. Instead, he looked almost startled that I'd noticed. "Yeah, just work stuff. Nothing important." But his voice had that tight quality it got when he was stressed about a big client, and he was holding his phone face down against his leg like he was protecting it. The calls kept coming. During the cupcake decorating station, Kieran's phone buzzed so insistently that Mrs. Peterson, another parent volunteer, glanced over with raised eyebrows. I saw Kieran check the screen quickly, his jaw tightening before shoving the phone deeper into his pocket. But you can't hide that kind of vibration, especially not in a quiet classroom where the biggest noise is usually 7-year-olds arguing about sprinkle colors. Other parents were starting to notice. I caught Mr. Williams, Madison's dad, looking in our direction when the phone went off during story time. Even Ms. Valdez seemed to pause mid-sentence when another round of buzzing interrupted her reading of a Valentine story. The breaking point came during the snack distribution. Kieran stepped away from helping serve juice boxes, whispering, "I need to take this," before heading toward the classroom door. I watched him through the window in the hallway, and nothing about his body language said, "Work call." He was leaning against the wall, one hand running through his hair, his voice low and intimate. I couldn't make out words, but I could see his face, and it wasn't the expression of a man discussing quarterly sales reports or closing documents. When he came back, Brielle immediately noticed his distracted mood. "Daddy, why does work call you so much?" she asked, looking up from her cupcake with pink frosting smeared across her cheek. "They called you yesterday during dinner, and Saturday when we were at the park, and last night when I was brushing my teeth." The innocent observation hit me like a physical blow. She was right. The phone calls had been happening more frequently, and I'd been unconsciously making excuses for them. "He's working on a big deal," I'd tell myself, or "it's just the nature of sales work." But hearing it through Brielle's eyes, I realized how intrusive and constant these interruptions had become. Kieran deflected with practiced ease. "Sometimes grown-up work is complicated, sweetheart. Hey, did you see how pretty your cupcake looks?" But I was watching him now with new eyes, noticing how he positioned his body to shield his phone screen, how he'd developed this habit of checking messages with quick, furtive glances. My mind started racing through recent changes I'd dismissed as normal life adjustments. Kieran had been working late more often, coming home after Brielle's bedtime with apologies about difficult clients and extended negotiations. He'd started buying new clothes without mentioning it, upgrading his cologne, paying more attention to his appearance. I'd actually been proud of him for taking better care of himself, thinking it showed professional confidence. Then there were the showers. Every single day when he got home from work, Kieran would head straight to the bathroom before even greeting us properly. "I just feel grimy after being in office buildings all day," he'd said when I mentioned it. It seemed reasonable at the time, even considerate. The phone buzzed again during cleanup time, and this time I was close enough to see the screen before Kieran could flip it over. The caller ID read Tessa M, with a heart emoji next to the name. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might be sick right there in the classroom, full of children and decorated cupcakes. Tessa. I didn't know any Tessa in Kieran's work circle. His office was small, maybe 8 people total, and I'd met them all at company parties. There was no Tessa in commercial real estate who would be calling him during his daughter's school party with a heart emoji next to her name. But even as my world started tilting, I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe she was a new colleague. Maybe the heart was some kind of mistake. Maybe I was being the paranoid, insecure wife I'd always pitied in other people's stories. I was about to find out just how wrong I was, and my 7-year-old daughter was about to become the most honest person in that room, full of adults who were all pretending not to notice that something was very, very wrong with my perfect marriage. The moment that changed everything happened during the final activity of the party. Ms. Valdez had gathered all the children in a circle for a group reading of The Day It Rained Hearts, and parents were settling into tiny plastic chairs or leaning against the walls, phones finally tucked away as we focused on our kids. The room had that peaceful end-of-party atmosphere where everyone was winding down, children's sugar highs starting to crash, and parents mentally preparing for the drive home. Kieran's phone buzzed again. This time, Brielle was sitting right next to him on the reading carpet, her head leaning against his shoulder in that trusting way children do with their parents. When the vibration interrupted the quiet story time, she looked up at him with those big, curious eyes that missed nothing. And then, in the clear, innocent voice that only a 7-year-old can manage, she asked the question that shattered my world. "Daddy, is work the lady who calls you baby at night? I heard you talking to her when I got up for water last Thursday." The entire classroom went silent. Not the natural quiet of children listening to a story, but the shocked, uncomfortable silence of adults who've just witnessed something they shouldn't have. Ms. Valdez stopped reading mid-sentence, her finger still pointing to a cartoon heart on the page. Every parent in that room turned to look at our family, some trying to be discreet, others openly staring. I felt like someone had poured ice water through my veins. My perfect husband, the man who brought me coffee every morning and never missed a school event, went completely white. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. He didn't deny it. He didn't laugh it off as childhood imagination. He didn't even look confused. He just sat there, frozen, with guilt written across his face so clearly that even the other parents could read it. "Brielle, sweetie," Ms. Valdez said gently, trying to redirect the situation. "Let's continue with our story." But the damage was done. You can't unring that bell, can't take back words that have exposed a truth everyone in the room now understood. I stared at Kieran, waiting for him to say something, anything that would make sense of what our daughter had just revealed. But he remained silent, his face a mask of panic and shame. In that moment of his speechlessness, I realized that Brielle's innocent question had just confirmed every suspicion I'd been suppressing. The other parents were pretending to focus on their children, but I could feel their discomfort radiating through the room. Mrs. Peterson was suddenly very interested in her daughter's craft project. Mr. Williams was checking his watch like he had somewhere urgent to be. The tension was so thick you could cut it with safety scissors. My hands were shaking, but my voice was surprisingly steady when I spoke. "Kieran, unlock your phone." It wasn't a request. It was a demand born from months of ignored instincts and a 7-year-old's brutal honesty. I wasn't asking anymore. I was done making excuses for late nights and mysterious phone calls and new cologne that smelled nothing like the man I'd married. "Senna, we should talk about this at home," he said quietly, finally finding his voice. But even his attempt at damage control sounded hollow. He was looking around the room, acutely aware that 30 people had just witnessed our private life explode in public. "No," I said, and I surprised myself with how firm I sounded. "Unlock your phone, right now." Ms. Valdez was trying to corral the children, asking parent volunteers to help move the party to the library for an extended story time. But several parents were clearly listening to every word of our conversation, and I couldn't blame them. If I'd been in their position, witnessing another family's crisis unfold, I probably would have been just as transfixed. Kieran looked at his phone, then at me, then at Brielle, who was watching this adult drama unfold with the fascination children have for things they don't fully understand. "Please," he said, and I heard desperation in his voice. Not here. But I was done protecting his reputation, done caring about public embarrassment, done being the understanding wife who handled everything privately. Our daughter had just revealed that she'd been listening to her father have intimate conversations with another woman, and I was supposed to wait until we got home to address it? I was supposed to smile and pretend everything was fine while we cleaned up construction paper hearts and packed up leftover cupcakes? "Give me the phone, Kieran," I repeated, extending my hand. My wedding ring caught the fluorescent classroom light, and I had the fleeting thought that I might not be wearing it much longer. The room held its breath. Even the children seemed to sense that something monumental was happening, though they couldn't understand what. Ms. Valdez had successfully moved most of the kids to the reading corner, but Brielle remained close to us, her big eyes moving between her parents as she began to realize her innocent question had caused something much bigger than she'd intended. Kieran looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact second he realized he was caught. His shoulders sagged in defeat, and slowly, reluctantly, he handed me his phone. The phone felt heavier than it should have in my trembling hands. Kieran had unlocked it before handing it over, probably realizing that refusing would only make him look more guilty in front of everyone. My finger hovered over the screen for just a second before I opened his messages, and what I found there made my knees weak. The first conversation thread was with Tessa, and the preview showed enough to make my stomach lurch. I clicked on it with a hand that was surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. The messages were recent, intimate, and devastating. "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby," sent just yesterday. "Tell Senna you're working late again," from last Friday. "I love you too," from Sunday night while I was giving Brielle her bath. But the message that destroyed me completely was the most recent one, sent just 43 minutes ago while I was helping kids glue hearts onto construction paper. "Just got your text. Senna's at Brielle's school thing, right? Perfect timing for us." The betrayal hit me in waves. Not only was my husband cheating, but this woman knew about me, knew about our daughter, knew our schedule. She was celebrating the fact that I was at my child's school party so she could spend time with my husband. They weren't just having an affair. They were actively planning around my life, using my commitments as opportunities for their relationship. I didn't keep this discovery to myself. In a moment of raw pain and fury that I'll probably regret for the rest of my life, I read that last message out loud. My voice carried across the classroom, clear enough for every parent still lingering to hear. "Just got your text. Senna's at Brielle's school thing, right? Perfect timing for us." The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that room full of 7-year-olds and their mortified parents. Some children looked confused, sensing the tension but not understanding the words. The adults understood perfectly, and their discomfort was palpable. Kieran lunged forward, trying to grab the phone from my hands. "Senna, stop, please," he said, his voice cracking with panic. But I stepped back, clutching the phone protectively. I wasn't done. 12 years of marriage, 12 years of trust, 12 years of believing I knew this man, and I was going to understand exactly how long I'd been living a lie. Ms. Valdez, bless her heart, immediately recognized the gravity of what was happening. She quietly approached the few parent volunteers still in the room and asked them to take all the children to the library for an extended story time. "We'll have a special Valentine's reading," she announced brightly, though her eyes were full of concern as she looked at me. "Mrs. Chen is waiting for us with some wonderful books." As the children filed out, chattering excitedly about the unexpected library visit, Brielle lingered near us. She looked scared now, realizing that her innocent question had triggered something much bigger than she'd intended. "Mommy, did I do something wrong?" she asked in a small voice. "No, sweetheart," I managed to say, my voice thick with emotion. "You did nothing wrong. Nothing at all." Ms. Valdez gently took Brielle's hand and guided her toward the door. "Your mommy and daddy need to talk about grown-up things," she said kindly. "Let's go read some stories while they figure things out." With the children gone, I continued scrolling through the messages. Months of conversations, months of "I love you" and "I miss you" and planning secret meetings. Photos I couldn't bear to look at closely. Plans for weekend getaways that I'd been told were work conferences. My entire marriage was a fraud, and the evidence was right there in my hands. "How long?" I asked, though I was still reading and already finding the answer. The conversation thread went back 8 months. 8 months of lies, 8 months of working late, 8 months of him coming home to me and Brielle after spending time with another woman. "Senna, I can explain," Kieran said, but his voice sounded hollow, defeated. He knew there was no explanation that could make this right. "Explain what? Explain how you've been lying to me for 8 months? Explain how you told another woman you loved her while I was giving our daughter a bath? Explain how you used our daughter's school party as an opportunity to sneak around with your girlfriend?" By now, the few remaining parents had quietly excused themselves, taking their children and their uncomfortable knowledge of our family's destruction with them. Only Miss Valdez remained in the hallway, standing guard to make sure Brielle couldn't overhear the conversation that was ending my marriage. I looked at Kieran, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. This wasn't the man who brought me coffee every morning. This wasn't the father who never missed a school event. This was someone I didn't know at all. Someone who'd been playing a role so convincingly that I'd never suspected the truth. The room was decorated with paper hearts and empty juice boxes, the remnants of a celebration that had turned into a nightmare. And I realized that sometimes the most devastating moments of your life happen in the most innocent places, witnessed by the most unexpected people. Ms. Valdez returned to the classroom after settling the children in the library, and what she did next still brings tears to my eyes. She walked straight over to me, took my trembling hand in both of hers, and said with genuine warmth, "We'll take care of Brielle while you process this. She doesn't need to see you upset right now." In that moment of complete devastation, this near stranger became my lifeline. Those simple words, "We'll take care of your child," represented something I hadn't expected to find that day. Compassion from someone who owed me nothing. Support from a community I'd taken for granted. Kindness when my world was crumbling in the most humiliating way possible. The next few hours were a blur of difficult conversations. Kieran tried to minimize it at first, calling it a mistake, a midlife crisis, something that meant nothing. But 8 months of "I love you" messages aren't a mistake. Planning secret getaways while your wife packs your daughter's lunch isn't a crisis. It's a choice, made over and over again, every single day. I drove home alone that afternoon while Kieran went to collect Brielle from the school. She needed consistency, needed to know that despite what she'd witnessed, she was still safe and loved. Ms. Valdez had prepared her carefully, explaining that sometimes adults have problems to work through, and that none of it was her fault. The divorce process was brutal but necessary. Kieran alternated between begging for forgiveness and blaming me for not meeting his needs. He claimed the affair happened because we'd grown apart, because he felt unappreciated, because Tessa made him feel alive again. I listened to his excuses and realized that this man I'd spent 12 years with had never really known me at all. If he had, he would have known I'd rather be alone than share him with someone else. Brielle struggled at first, asking difficult questions about why Daddy wasn't living with us anymore, why she had to pack a bag for weekends at his apartment. But children are remarkably resilient when the adults in their lives are honest with them. I never badmouthed Karen to her, but I also never made excuses for his choices. She learned that sometimes people make decisions that hurt the people they love, and that loving someone means wanting them to be happy, even if it means changing the family structure. 6 months later, I can honestly say that losing my marriage was the beginning of finding myself. I discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. I learned that I could handle bedtime routines and school pickups and broken dishwashers all by myself. I realized that I'd been so focused on being the perfect wife that I'd forgotten how to be my own person. The most unexpected gift came from other women who reached out after hearing about what happened. Apparently, my public humiliation had given others permission to share their own stories of betrayal and recovery. I started a support group for women going through similar situations, meeting in the same library where Ms. Valdez had taken the children that terrible afternoon. Brielle has learned lessons I never intended to teach her. She's learned that telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, is always the right choice. She's learned that women can be strong and independent and happy without needing someone else to complete them. Most importantly, she's learned that she deserves to be with people who choose her every single day, not just when it's convenient. I think about that Valentine's party often, about how my perfect life shattered among construction paper hearts and juice boxes. But I've come to understand that perfect lives built on lies aren't really perfect at all. They're just pretty facades covering rotten foundations, and eventually, the truth finds a way to break through. Sometimes I wonder if Brielle was an angel that day, sent to save me from wasting more years on a man who didn't deserve my loyalty. Children see the world with such clarity, unfiltered by the excuses and rationalizations that adults use to avoid uncomfortable truths. Today, I wake up in a smaller house with a bigger sense of peace. I make my own coffee in the morning, and it tastes better than any cup Kieran ever brought me because it's honest. When my phone rings, I answer it without wondering who's on the other end or what secrets are being kept. If you're watching this and recognizing yourself in my story, if you're making excuses for behavior that doesn't feel right, if your children are asking questions you're afraid to answer, please listen to them. Listen to your instincts. Listen to that voice inside you that knows when something is wrong, even when you desperately want to believe everything is fine. My daughter saved me that day by being brave enough to tell the truth when all the adults in the room were pretending not to see it. Sometimes the people who love us most are the ones courageous enough to shatter our comfortable illusions. I'm not thankful for the betrayal, but I'm grateful for the wake-up call. I'm not thankful for the humiliation, but I'm grateful for the community of support I never knew existed. I'm not thankful for the pain, but I'm grateful for the strength I discovered on the other side of it. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Comment below with your own experiences of finding strength in unexpected places. And subscribe to the channel for more real stories about real women navigating life's most challenging moments. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is tell the truth about our lives, even when it's messy and imperfect and nothing like the fairy tale we thought we were living.